Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Modern Health with Dr. Jane. Of course, I'm Dr. Jane. I'm a naturopathic doctor and natural fertility expert, and I help couples who have been struggling with infertility for more than a year get to the root cause of their fertility and help them conceive naturally. Today, I want to talk about labs. My labs are normal. Now what? So this is a really hot topic and a lot of frustrations around labs because let's face it, when you've been struggling to conceive, or even when you're trying to be proactive and you have maybe some symptoms of PCOS or endometriosis, heavy periods, whatever, or irregular periods, you're just trying to be proactive and you go to the doctor, they run some labs and they're like, nope, everything is normal. It's all good. And deep down inside, you're like, but something feels off. So if these labs are normal, does it really mean that it's normal, or am I missing something? And so with this podcast, I want to share a little bit about my story, but I also really want to encourage you to never stop listening to that voice inside of you that tells you, something doesn't feel right here. Because just like when something doesn't feel right, there's always something that that totally makes sense. So when I meet with my clients and I go through an interview process and we kind of just start to unpack some of the stuff that they've been through, they're like, yeah, no one's ever looked at my digestion. No one's ever looked at how I sleep. They just prescribe me medication. Yet no one even ever asked me around how much blood volume am I losing in my menstrual cycle, or what does my white cervical fluid look like, which are all the signs and symptoms that your body is telling you that something is wrong, right? If you're not sleeping, if you're not pooping on a regular basis, if you don't have any white cervical fluid production, or it's very little, or you have hot flashes in your cycle, like those are all signs and symptoms that something is wrong. And every time you go to the doctor and they tell you, no, that's normal. Don't worry about it. Your labs are normal. It's like that little voice inside of you, that intuition is being shut down and buried deeper and deeper and deeper. And what I want to do is bring that intuition back out, because you are a woman, you are smart, you have a menstrual cycle, you are very connected to understanding your body. Nobody knows your body better than you. And if you have a hunch that something is wrong and it's not working well, maybe it's in your mind, but maybe that anxiety is actually being driven by something else. And so if you are told, oh, don't worry about it, you're overthinking it or whatever, just know that, yeah, there's times where you are overthinking it, but a lot of the times you actually just need some help and some guidance. And lab work is a great way to get a look inside your body to help us understand and make sense of all the symptoms. Because let's face it, symptoms can be super confusing. And even as a practitioner, I've been at this for 9 years, almost going on to my 10th year, and I still find symptoms confusing because, for example, low energy can be because you have mold toxicity, or because you have low iron, or you have low B12 that could be coming from an infection, whether it's parasites or Lyme. Or you could be having your nervous system is upregulated, stuck in fight or flight. So there's so many different reasons as to why you might be feeling fatigued, that if I try to give you a protocol or try to give you supplements and diet and lifestyle changes just based on your symptoms, you're going to feel like you're just on the constant rat race, trying to like wild goose chase, trying to figure out what symptom is causing what. And then you have the kitchen sink approach of all the vitamins and supplements you're taking, because you're like, well, I guess I'm low on B12 and now I'm low on B6. And then I have to take some vitamin C, and then I need some antioxidants. And it's like, well, what's happening here? Why is that all happening? So lab work is a really great way to look that in. And so if you're getting the answer of my labs are normal, it's very frustrating because obviously you don't have any answers still and you don't have any direction. And the big thing is like the feeling inside of you that says, something is wrong, is not validated. So you feel unacknowledged and you literally feel like, okay, I guess I'm just crazy, which is the worst feeling that you can have. Because let's face it, like I said, you are a woman, you are smart, you have a menstrual cycle. You're not crazy. You're not crazy. There's something off in your body and it doesn't feel right. And it sucks when you can't get it validated. So the mistake that I don't want you to make is to shut down that voice and to say, yeah, I guess I'm good. I guess I was wrong. I guess that's just the way that I am. I guess I just have bad luck. Well, my parents do suffer with this as well. So I guess I'm just aging and I'm experiencing all this. Do not make that mistake. Do not believe somebody based on some lab work that they ran and they told you without you actually seeing and confirming that everything in the labs is in fact normal. Don't believe that, because your voice deep down inside and the fact that you still have symptoms, even if the symptom is just anxiety, it's enough for you to continue to search and look and understand what is causing that anxiety. Is it really just mental and emotional, or is there some deficiencies that I'm experiencing? That anxiety is so real, you guys, and it's really important for you to not give up on that. And the quick side note, an example I want to give you is when I was in my early 20s, I had pretty bad IBS. Now, truthfully, I developed that IBS probably through my teens. And then as I was going through university, a bunch of drinking, a bunch of eating donuts, and just like, sleeping on the floor of residency, just a terrible lifestyle, if you will, it became out of control. Now, I also gained a bunch of weight, which was so new for me. I was always a really tiny person and had a hard time gaining weight. It's not that I would try to gain weight, but like literally I could eat whatever and I wouldn't. And now all of a sudden I had an extra 25 pounds on my body. And that literally felt like it was overnight. So I remember going to the doctor and being like, something is wrong. I have to run to the bathroom a lot. I'm going to the bathroom a lot more frequently than my friends. Like, I have to watch for when I eat. So if we're going out, I know I have to know where the bathrooms are. And there's times where I felt like I wouldn't make it to the bathroom. And when I told this to the doctor, he's like, oh, we'll run some lab work and see what it is. And we ran some lab work and everything came back normal. And he was just like, you just have a little bit of IBS and basically there's nothing we can do about it. Like we can give you a laxative if you're feeling constipated, or we can give you, something to help decrease the diarrhea if you have diarrhea too much, which I didn't have diarrhea. I just had urgency. And essentially those were my options. And then if I had more severe symptoms, like I had blood in my stool for a couple of months, and not like a couple of times, he said a couple of months, then you can get like a colonoscopy and we can look. But for the most part, it's like, sorry, you just drew a bad card. And I was only early 20s and I was on birth control back then too. And obviously that was not connected to it at all. And my mood changes weren't connected to birth control. Of course, I now know that that's not the case, but I didn't know at the time. And essentially, I could have just said, I guess that's the way that I am. But I had this deep, like this thing inside me, deep down in my bones, that was like, that doesn't sound right. Like that just doesn't sound right. And there has to be a better way. And so that set me off on a search. And of course, there was a lot of stuff wrong. They had a bunch of food sensitivities. I had a bunch of mold and candida overgrowth. I had a lot of mental and emotional pieces that were really important. Some really big shocks in my life, like moving away from family, starting a new school, breaking up with my boyfriend. Like there was all this stuff that was happening that I didn't know was connected to my physical symptoms and what I was experiencing. And it wasn't until somebody made those connections that was really valuable for me. So what I want you guys is to make sure that you follow that voice, but you also get validated. And my goal with my podcast is to provide you with information so you can start to advocate for yourself and to have this clear understanding of what labs do I really have ran? Are they really normal? Is there a normal range versus an optimal range? Who do I need to ask for what labs? Because let's face it, your conventional doctors are looking for disease. They're not looking for optimal health. So, because they're only looking, their toolbox is prescriptions, medications, and procedures, right? IUIs, IVFs. So I have so many women come to me and they're like, I'm so disappointed in my fertility doctor. All they do is just push IVF. And it's like, yeah, that's all they know. They didn't go to nutrition or lifestyle or study supplements. Like they didn't study any of that. They study the reproductive system and then they study how to manipulate it with medications or procedures. So that's all they're going to do. So if you are looking to get pregnant naturally, You can't go to the conventional doctor and ask them, how do I get pregnant naturally? They're not going to give you that option. Now, you should still go to the conventional doctor because they have the labs. And a lot of the times when patients come to me, they have the labs so I can help them interpret it. For the most part, if you're looking to get pregnant, you need to find a natural fertility expert, right? Naturopathic doctor, functional medical doctor. Ideally, they would be specializing in fertility like myself, because there's a lot of value to that. There's different things that we do in the fertility world than, let's say, somebody who's just optimizing general health. That's what we want. Let's talk about labs. And what does it actually mean when your labs are normal and what your next steps needs to be? So one thing that I do want to address, and I want to make sure that you secretly are not hoping that all your labs are normal. Be honest with yourself, do a gut check. Am I secretly hoping that all the labs are normal? Because finding out that something is wrong would be devastating, and you would actually feel really scared, and it would be a huge shot to the ego, and you would be scared because I am broken, and that confirmation of being broken and something wrong, or I can't do anything about it. And these labs are going to basically confirm that something is seriously wrong. Do you have that fear? Because if you have that fear, you really need to, number one, dissect it and understand, where's that fear coming from? Is that because you've always been told that everything is normal, and God forbid that something is not normal, and I guess there's nothing I can do about it, or I need to be on medication? Those are some really deep-rooted false beliefs. Like a belief that my body cannot heal is so, and people will say it all the time. Couples to me will be like, no, I think I will get pregnant, but their actions are very different. They don't actually believe that their system can heal. And so you go through the motions, but there isn't this like, no, my body is going to heal, and I'm going to regulate my menstrual cycle, and I'm going to get my energy better, and my digestion can start moving better. And I'm not going to rely on medication for those things. And again, it's not that I'm against medication, but you guys, we're relying on medication to, if you are between the ages of 20 to, let's say, 26, chances are you are on 2 to 3 different medications, including birth control, including ADHD, including antidepressant. Like, that's insane. I do not remember being on any kind of medication until I decided to go on birth control. And even then, when I came off, it was never an option to be like, oh, I guess I'm feeling anxious, I should just go on medication, right? And again, I'm not saying that there is a time and place for it, but when we're relying on these things and there is no way to get you off, like, I'm just going to be on anti-anxiety or antidepressants for the rest of my life, starting at the age of 20, think about the effect that has on your brain development, on your personality development, on, not even to mention, your gut microbiome and the opportunities you take and all. And then, of course, your fertility and all that jazz. So I want you to make sure that, what are the beliefs that I have around getting my labs? And am I okay with finding out that things are wrong? Because if you're not feeling well, I guarantee you that things are wrong. But we are never going to present you with a problem without presenting you with a solution. There's always a solution to the problem, and there's always multiple solutions to the problem. There is a medication, there's a natural approach, right? There's different types of, within the conventional system, there's different approaches. Within the natural alternative space, there's different approaches to things. And so, first of all, it's you having the courage to say, I am ready to find out what's wrong, even if it hurts my ego, even if it scares me a lot. Whatever those fears come up, those fears are important for you to know, because those fears are there. They're already there. And they're subconsciously buried deep down. So we need to bring them out. In lab work, I'm telling you, I have lots of people who get overwhelmed and they'll even cry after they receive lab work, because they're like, oh my God, there's so many things that are wrong. And the truth is, we want that because that's the thing that's going to motivate you to change your lifestyle. But also, if you're already highly motivated, then it's just going to provide you with a target of like, this is exactly how I fix this. This is going to validate all of those things that you've been feeling. like, oh my God, I am bloated all the time and I'm tired and my period is really painful. And your doctor's like, everything is normal. That doesn't feel very good. That doesn't give you an action plan. Versus like, hey, look at all these infections you have in the gut and look at all this inflammation. And it looks like your protein levels are really low and all these, and we're going to put you on the supplement protocol and look at that. In 2 weeks, you're already starting to feel better. Cool. That's awesome. Right? So there's always a solution to the problem. And almost like if you've been told that things are not fixable, if you will, just understand that that's probably a deep-rooted belief again that comes from parents, from, schooling and just like family, your experiences. But in my world, in the alternative world, if you will, and the conferences that I go to and the things that I do with, my patients who was told they're infertile, they have 5% or less chance of conceiving because they've been trying to conceive for 3 years and it's unexplained infertility and, sorry, you're shit out of luck, basically. And within a year of working together, they conceived. But within the first 3 months, her digestion improved. In the following 3 months, her white cervical fluid production quadrupled, where sex wasn't actually painful anymore. She actually had a libido. The next 9 months, her hair stopped falling out. And people started to notice that she's different. She had a speech at the wedding and her friends were like, your voice is different. You're so much more confident. What are you doing? She literally became a different person within that year. And that honestly is what it takes. And so she was told that there was nothing wrong, but there was a lot of things wrong. And she literally felt like she was becoming a different person. So whatever it is that comes up for you, whether it's autoimmune disease, whether it's thyroid issues, whether it's liver enzymes or blood sugar dysregulation or your kidney function or your egg quality, or you have low progesterone or high FSH or low AMH, I promise you those things are fixable. It's not a take this pill and it will get better. It's a lot of work understanding what has created this disease, if you will, in your environment and fixing your environment, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Like I said, this couple will all be sharing their case study soon enough when everything is good with the pregnancy. And so you guys can hear their journey. But if you can see that process, then you're like, oh, it's not that I was doing the wrong things. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't have enough guidance. So this is where the labs can come into place. And it's also not just, oh, now I'm drinking filtered water. Now what? There's more components to it than that, depending on how deep the issue is, right? So the first thing is, number one, we have to understand what the issue is. And number two, we have to be mentally ready to accept that there are issues in the body. And some of you are like, I want to know what the stuff is. I'm ready for it. But some of you might feel really scared and nervous, and just know that that's okay. That's a normal kind of gut reaction. That's your ego protecting you. But it is really important to know what's going on. So let's talk about if your labs are normal. Here's what that means. The labs that your doctor has ran are probably in fact normal. Are they optimal? I don't know. Unlikely, but the labs that your doctor has ran are normal. Has your doctor ran everything? No. Hasn't, especially if it's your conventional doctor. So the labs that you have ran are in fact normal, but you're probably missing a lot of labs. And so if they only ran 10 markers or 30 markers, and there is 100 markers that they could run, the 50 or the 30 or the 10 that they ran are in fact normal. Are they optimal? We don't know that, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing else to be ran. That's probably all that doctor can do, because it's rare that doctors will only run some things and do it because they're withholding information. For the most part, they should be. And I have a whole podcast on here's when you should be testing your sex hormones, for example. This is what it should look like. Then, listen to that podcast because it will help you understand if they're even running everything. But this is where I say there's two types of labs. There's labs that show us what's happening and labs that show us why it's happening. And the why labs are your functional labs. So they give you a deeper understanding of the function of the body. We're not looking at the diagnostic. So the what labs are usually the diagnostic labs. That's your ultrasound, that's your blood work, CT scans, even your hormones analysis, right, through blood work, and even through some of the functional lab testing. There's labs that just show us what is going on in the body. So if you have a lot of food sensitivities, if you have a lot of cysts on your ovaries, if you have hormonal imbalances like low progesterone, high estrogen, or your FSH is high, or NH is low, those are all telling us that, oh, okay, something is wrong, but it doesn't tell us why. So the why is a lot more understanding, like, hey, why would the body not make any hormones? Like, why would that progesterone be low? And that means that we have to have a deeper understanding, or your practitioner has to have a deeper understanding of the body and how it functions, and more so on the cellular level. So if we take everything down to the cell, like how is the cell supposed to function and what is it supposed to do? Then if there's nutrients that are low, if the enzymes are high, instead of just taking the nutrient, you're now asking deeper questions of, well, why would my CoQ10 be low? Is my CoQ10 low? Or why is my progesterone low? Where is it made? What are the nutrients that we need to make it? And when we understand the nutrients, then it's, well, why are the nutrients low? Am I not taking them in? Am I not absorbing it? Is something using it up? Is the machinery that's supposed to help us make the hormones not working properly? So now we're getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the function of the body and the cell. Because I would love it if your issues could be fixed just by taking some vitamins. I would love that. Hey, low progesterone, just take some Chase Street and take some B6 and your progesterone will go up. That would be great. And it works for some people, but for most it doesn't. Why? Because progesterone, low progesterone, well, usually there's a quality of the egg issue, but also the hormone progesterone we make in the mitochondria. And the mitochondria helps us with making energy, making hormones, making cortisol, even hydration with the body. But the other thing that most people don't know, so mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? It helps us energy with all those things I just mentioned. But it also is a battleship. So it really gets impacted by environmental toxins like industrial environmental toxins, heavy metals, radioactive elements. Believe it or not, we're exposed to it a lot more than you think. There's also the things like glyphosate, pesticides, herbicides, right? And even other BPAs, other volatile organic compounds. All those things will bog down the mitochondria, parasites, infections. So now we're looking at the function of the cell as opposed to, oh, I'm just missing some nutrients, right? So functional lab testing allows us to get deeper in to the knowledge and understanding why is getting to the root cause, right? Not just patching things up with vitamins and not just patching things up with medication as well. What helps with supporting symptoms? And the reason that we want to run both. So you want to run the diagnostic testing because it's really insightful, but you also want to run the functional testing because the what will help us with supporting your system symptoms right now. Okay. So what I do is when I run and I'll share the order of priority in terms of lab tests that I would run. When I run the blood work or when I review people's ultrasounds and, CT scans and all that jazz, and even nutrient levels. Hey, you have low vitamin D, your B vitamins are really low. I will give you that in the first month or so to help bring up your levels so you feel better. And that will help get you out of fight or flight and will help manage some of those uncomfortable symptoms that you have. But now we always have to work on the why those things are happening in the first place. So the example that I gave with low progesterone and mitochondria, because if I just give you B6 and Vitex, let's say, to help improve progesterone or in vitamin C, like some of the things that are really big in research, then you might notice this initial bump in energy and improvement, and then it's just going to stall. You're like, yeah, I've been taking this stuff for months and it's not happening anymore. And that's because you're not dealing with the why. If you have a really high environmental toxic load, if you have infections, if you have parasites, right, viral, bacterial load, whatever, your mitochondria is busy dealing with that stuff. And so we have to, and there's a process. So if you do have heavy metals, you're not going to detox heavy metals right away. You have to make sure that the liver and the kidneys and your colon are working well, your drainage pathways are open, okay, you can get rid of things effectively. And then we can start getting deeper into the cell and supporting the mitochondria function and pulling things out. And so the what labs really help us to treat the symptoms and help you feel better initially. But the why will help us get to the root cause so you're not then attached to those supplements or lifestyle. For example, a huge thing I see is like the FODMAP diet. Oh, I've been on the FODMAP diet for months. Like, no. FODMAP diet is something you do for a couple of weeks to help support the symptoms, but it's not something that you do for months. That's going to wipe out your gut flora. And I see it on the stool analysis. So here's the bottom line. If your labs are normal, here's what it means. The labs that you have, in fact, are normal, but it's really not enough information. They might not be optimal. And for either scenarios, you need more testing. So here's kind of what I love to run to get more insight. This is what works really well for my patients. I use a company called Vibrant America because they have probably the highest in terms of like their gut stool analysis is the most comprehensive on the market to date. And then they have a really comprehensive environmental toxic burden as well. So the gut stool analysis that I run has, it has like 7 inflammatory markers. It has, how is your digestive system absorption working? Pancreatic, like, are you absorbing your fat? Are you actually producing enzymes? How is your immune system working? What infections do you have? Your pH levels of the stool? Is there leaky gut? Really comprehensive stool analysis. The environmental toxic burden has, it looks at mold, it looks at heavy metals, it looks at industrial environmental toxins. And I also run organic acids with it, which is basically how your body is metabolizing nutrients, yeast, bacteria, neurotransmitters, carbohydrates, fats. I like to get a different ways to look into the body. And then, of course, they run blood work as well. But for the most part, people have blood work. Usually we don't have blood work at the times that we need to, so we need to rerun that. But people do have lab work, so blood work, if you will. So the order of priority is like you need blood work, you need a good stool analysis, and you need environmental toxic burden. You're going to get 85% of information that you need to get successful, if you will, to run those labs. The other ones that I do sometimes, and it really depends on what's going on with a person, is we'll run a micronutrient analysis to really look at what the nutrient levels are. This is how I would love for people to learn to supplement. If you are going to spend any amount of money on supplements, you need to spend some money on the testing. So you're not just guessing on, oh, I need some vitamin C, or I need some vitamin A, or I need some CoQ10. It's like, you really don't know what you need because every system is different. But remember that nutrients are not the root cause. Toxicities cause deficiencies. So micronutrient analysis is really helpful to help get you out of the gutter quickly. But you always have to run the gut and the environmental toxin panel if you really want to get to the root cause. The other one that I'll run sometimes is like Lyme and co-infection. If there's history of low iron, lots of fatigue, infertility, that kind of stuff, and you live any history of tick bites, any signs and symptoms when I do my health history form, then for sure I'll do Lyme and co-infections. There's food sensitivities. I don't run a lot of those, but for some people it is helpful. And then there's the Dutch hormone panel. Again, really depends on what's going on with the hormones. Sometimes I'll run the whole month to see how the hormones are fluctuating, especially if you're having a really hard time telling when you're ovulating. It's really helpful. And then, of course, it just kind of comes down to the cost, right? Because you can run a lot of lab testing. The whole point of the podcast, you guys, is so you don't feel discouraged when you are told that labs are normal. It's just that that doctor has ran everything that they could. And I have a lot of practitioners, alternative practitioners, who don't run lab testing either. And I don't know why they choose to do that, but they choose to do that. And it works for some of them and it doesn't for others. But I used to not run labs because I wanted to save my patients money. And I was like, no, I'd rather them spend it on the treatment. But in reality, that you would spend so much more money on the treatment without knowing exactly what was going on. And so I run a lot of lab work because, in the field that I'm in, my people want to know answers. You want to have a goddamn answer as to why you have not been able to get pregnant. That's important. You also want to stop screwing around and you want to get to, like, you want to be pointed in the right direction. And the way that we do that is by getting answers, right? And so I don't prescribe supplements. I don't prescribe anything until I have all the labs, because I truly believe that once you have all the information, then the treatment works so much better and you stop wasting time and money on it. So if that resonates for you, then you need to find a practitioner who does that, right? You are always welcome to send an application, to fill out an application down below to work with me. But just know that not every practitioner is going to do this. So if this is something that you are data driven and you like numbers, don't work with a practitioner who's not data driven, who will not run labs, right? Or they will run one lab over and over again because they just got good at running that lab. Like, oh, I'm really good at running the Dutch lab panel, so I'm just going to do the Dutch panel on everybody every 6 months. There's practitioners who do that. Does it work for them? Sure. For the people that they're working with, it must be working. But if you feel like that doesn't work for you anymore, be okay to find somebody else. And I'm the same. The reason that I go through an interview process with my clients is I don't want to take somebody on that I can't help. That's not fun for anybody, right? I'm not in this field to just take your money and hope that, it turns out for you. So we have to run lab tests, and you have to, if you are driven by numbers, then you need to find a practitioner who's also driven by numbers to help you make sense of it all. So the mistakes that I don't want you to make, this is what I'll close off with, is your labs are only as good as the interpreter. So if you're like, oh my God, that's fantastic, thank you so much for all this information, I'm going to run these labs myself, you could do that. But if you have no idea what you're reading, like, your labs are only as good as the interpreter. So if you are the interpreter and you do not have any background in being a naturopathic doctor or functional medical doctor or whatever, then chances are you're going to miss out a bunch of stuff, and you're just going to chase the red things that you see on the page. And, for example, if you have parasites, I have a lot of people who are like, oh, I did this parasite cleanse, but I don't know if it's enough. And it's like, I don't know if it's enough because, like, there's no follow through here. How do you know? Like, it might take a month, but usually it doesn't. It's minimum 3 months, and sometimes it's 9 months to cleanse out parasites, especially if they get into the blood. So there's a lot to know here about what the labs really mean. And the other mistake that I see a lot of people make is they run one lab at a time. You're like, oh, I'll just run the gut analysis and see what shows up. Or I'll just run the mold panel, or I'll just run the heavy metals. And what that does is a lot of the times it prolongs your treatment, and you're still going to miss pieces, right? The goal of getting answers is figuring out the puzzle pieces. And if you're getting, like, if you have a 2,000 piece puzzle and you get like 5 or 6 pieces at a time, how good are you at putting together those pieces of the puzzle and being able to see the whole picture? Not very good. If you have like 30 pieces out of 2,000, like, my God, you're not going to be able to see anything. And so the whole point of running a bunch of lab work at the same time is so then you can reveal most of the puzzle. You're not going to reveal everything. It's impossible. But you have to reveal the biggest picture so at least you can start filling in the gaps, right? And so when people say the labs are normal, all that means is the labs are normal, but you only have a corner of the piece of the puzzle, and it doesn't show you the whole picture. You don't actually know. And part of that picture is lab work. The other part of it is getting a proper health assessment, right? So filling out some forms, working with a practitioner that's going to be able to help connect the dots between the symptoms that you're feeling and what's showing up on the labs. So it's not just about running the labs, it's really being able to understand the symptoms as well. The big question I get is like the cost. How much should I expect it? Honestly, I would say anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 on the labs per person is what I would say is realistic for you to spend. Because not only are you running five big markers, but more of like 10, 20, 50. The reports that I get back, they're like 100 pages long versus, 3 or 4 pages. So, and sometimes what they do in the conventional system is they'll put one lab, like vitamin D is on one page, and then, hormones are on the other page. So it looks like you have a lot of pages, but you actually have only one page worth of information. So if you're spending a couple $100 on labs, that either tells me the interpreter is not like, that's not going to be a very good interpreter, or that you're really not running enough information to tell you to fill in the big pieces of the puzzle. So I think that like that's standard when I hear people like, oh, I spent a couple $100. To me, I'm like, yeah, that's not enough. It's the same as saying I spent about $100 on supplements and I'm taking the highest quality supplements. And I'm like, that's just not the case anymore. That maybe you're going to Walgreens and you're buying a bunch of B12, vitamin C, and like you have 10 different supplements that you can get for $100, but those quality is not going to be very good. Just because if you're taking high quality supplements or ingredients or protein powders, it's just like there's a cost in manufacturing that. There's also a cost in producing it and who's making it and the testing that's involved, and even with the labs, like, do you want a lab that's going to skim you on some tests? Like I have a lot of people who are like, yeah, well, this lab, this gut stool analysis is like $200. And I'm like, yeah, because it gives you $200 worth of information, right? It gives you like 3 or 4 markers. And it's really understanding what you're running and why you're running it. But I do not recommend that you do this alone. I just recommend that you find a practitioner. And when you're fishing around, you're trying to find someone, like interview them and see what they say instead of just, hey, I heard this on a podcast. You should run this for me. If they have no idea what I'm talking about, your labs are only as good as the interpreter. They're just not going to be able to interpret those labs for you. Right. So, and I'm not saying there's some practitioners out there who will withhold running labs because they're trying to save you money. And so you might need to be a little bit more vocal about it and say, hey, I want to run labs and see what they have to offer. Now that you've listened to this information, you have more information that you can advocate for yourself. I hope you guys found this helpful. This is super important. Honestly, I would say I would go as far as like, stop taking supplements if you have no idea what's going on. Put that money away towards labs and finding a practitioner, because I see a lot of people who spend thousands of dollars on supplements and they've never ran good lab work. And so then you really are just poking in the dark, and we can do a lot better than that. So I hope you guys find this helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to send me a DM through Instagram. I'm very active on there and I answer your questions as much as I can. Please remember that I cannot give you medical advice. I'm not your practitioner. I'm here to provide you with as much information as I can so you can advocate for yourself. And if you would like to work with me, then hit the application form, fill out your Maximize Your Fertility application form, and my team and myself will review the application. We'll see if we can help. And if not, we'll point you in the right direction so you still have your next step figured out. But please, please, please don't let the my labs are normal stump you and make you stop your search. That's just the beginning of your search. Remember that intuition is so important, that deep down voice inside of you that feels like it's deep in your bones. That's like, something is wrong. I need you to follow that. I need you to listen to that, because that's the thing that's going to carry you through pregnancy and postpartum and through childbirth and through having children. It is like we have a gift as women. And I think we need to really, really let that voice wake up within us instead of suppressing it and letting someone else who barely knows us, barely ran any lab work, to tell us what's normal and what's not. You get to set that standard. And I hope that, you guys found this episode helpful. Like I said, please, please, please message me if you have any questions. And if you want to fill out a form to work with me, please do that. And I'll review it and I'll shoot you a message and let you know what the next steps are. Thanks so much, you guys. We'll see you next week.